a very big thank you to all our sponsors for their constant support and encouragement. We thank our platinum sponsor Cisco, our silver sponsor Walmart Global Tech India, and our partner NASCOM Foundation, who is supporting us in conducting a very unique virtual job fair for people with disabilities. First of all, a very warm welcome to all our honorable guest speakers. We are very happy and honored to have you all here. And yes, we will be starting our discussion soon. We had National Educational Policy 2020. So my first question will be a common question to all our speakers that yes, we have seen a number of policies which are implemented, but still most of our educational institutes are not accessible. So how, we can actually bridge the existing gap? So first I'll go to Dr. Nitika for her insights. So ma'am, please.
Allow me to begin by extending a namaste to everyone on this online dais and also to those participating through this virtual platform. And my special regards to Dr. Madan Mohan ji and Mr. Sai Bhagat ji and also everyone from the team of GiftAbled for giving me this opportunity. Now, when coming back to the question, when we look at accessibility at educational institutes, we can look at it from three purviews. The first, in terms of the physical access, be it in the entrance, classrooms, playgrounds, washrooms, parking area, drinking fountains, emergency evacuation systems, and all the facilities at the premise that may need accessibility considerations. The second purview could be in terms of the classroom inclusivity, which means looking at the student placement, that is the percentage of time the child is spending in the general education classes, and whether she or he is in the age appropriate and grade appropriate classroom. In this purview, we can also look at the classroom environment, the teaching, the curriculum, individualized educational program planning, classroom arrangements, student participation, peer relationships, paraprofessionals, and much more. And the third purview would be to look at the inclusive practices at the institute, be it in terms of creating inclusive cultures, producing inclusive policies, and evolving inclusive practices. And in order to achieve accessibility at all of these three purviews, we must work at making our efforts towards stronger policy and guidelines, linking accreditation and recognition to accessibility index, budget allocation, having a dedicated staff for equal opportunity cell, a centralized monitoring agency, maybe our initiatives for empathy development and sensitizations, capacity building and accessibility across different spheres of our institute, uh, establishing a sound grievance redressal system and strengthening the position of Divyang grievance redressal officer as well, convergence with leading national institutes, NGOs and disabled people organizations, and constitutionalizing awards for accessibility implementation and publicity and promotion of best practices, along with making the concept of reasonable accommodations much more accommodating. And the main reasons I believe for the existing gap is primarily the lack of capacity building of institutions in understanding the difference between mainstreaming, integration, and inclusion, which stems from our inadequacy of efficient policies and guidelines, poor advocacy and self-advocacy efforts, poor fear of law, poor budget allocation, inefficient grievance redressal systems, lack of sensitization and awareness generation efforts, and maybe poor monitoring system and much more. So I believe these are, accessibility considerations and also the gaps that we are currently facing in Indian context.
Yes, so three specific areas you are mentioning. So just quickly, if we want to understand like what will be the currently the most high prioritized area to look into.
If we look into out of three, I think most of us have initiated only the physical access part of inclusion as of now and accessibility as of now. But we immediately need to address the inclusive practices aspect, where we are talking about developing inclusive cultures and having inclusive policies and inclusive practices right from the time we are giving an admission to a student till the time the student passes out, takes the degree from our organization, be it in terms of the strategies that we're using to teach, the flexibility that we're offering in the curriculum, the evaluation accommodations that we're offering, the adapted teaching learning material that the child may need. So all of those are somehow lagging behind because of the lack of inclusive practices in the culture and the policies. Along with that, across our nation, you would see there are here and there good practices being implemented in terms of classroom inclusivity. In Northeast, if you see, because I was a part of that initiative, uh, the Northeast, SSA had taken an initiative of building the empathy development in peers of special needs students. So we had developed modules for pre-primary, primary students, and sensitizing them in generating awareness and empathy building exercises in their curriculum to ensure when they have students with special needs in their classroom, how can they be good friends? How can they be, effective peers to support the needs of their, classroom batchmates with disabilities? So there are isolated good practices, but the primary area I think that where we're lagging behind is the inclusive policies and the inclusive practices.
Exactly. So thanks for the amazing example, and yes, holistic accessibility approach. So yes, with this, I'll go to Mr. Sai Bhagat with the same question. What do you think is lacking in current scenario, and what is the reason for the
This
existing gap?
meeting is being recorded.
Thanks for the question, Ruksha, and I'm thankful to GiftAbled for this invitation. We are all are here. Great initiative. I must appreciate all of you. Good afternoon to all the participants. Hi to Nita ma'am and Madan ma'am, sir. Uh, Now coming back to the question, what exactly we are missing in present scenario? How can we fill this gap? I mean, I completely echo what ma'am has just said, because she rightly mentioned all the important points that on which areas we all have to work. In my opinion, I mean, in addition to that, I believe along with the inclusive policies, we have to make sure that we have right implementation. Because if you look at the policy documents, the processes, what we have everything on the paper, but no one looks at that true real implementation, and that's where we lack, I believe. So when we have policies, we have to have someone who can monitor those processes. How are we developing those things? If we are implementing certain things, then we have to ensure that we follow the same process when we do that particular activity once again whenever it is required. Number two, as rightly mentioned by ma'am, that inclusive culture extremely important, because when we know the people, those who are involved, the faculty, the staff, everyone, the students, we have to have that inclusive culture, that empathy, what ma'am had just mentioned, that it is so important that we have to understand that everyone should look at student with disabilities as another student. They are having some special needs, but apart from that, all the competencies, what sort of skills, what sort of abilities, what they have, I mean, they can also be like the students. So this inclusive policies, this inclusive culture is extremely important. But as I mentioned, that we will be able to fill this gap only and only when we look into the implementation part. I mean, we have got RPDA 2016, we have got other digital accessibility guidelines, we have got GIGW, we have got specific guidelines for student study material, but still, whenever it comes to accessibility, we lack. The reason here is there is no real implementation, and we all have to work together to achieve that real implementation, to see the everything, whatever we have written in the paper, coming into the reality, and then only we can follow the same path to ensure the inclusive education for all our students.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So yes, not only policy prescriptions on the paper, but yes, effective work on the implementation process as well. So yes, with this, I'll go to Dr. Madan Mohan. And sir, we are making policies, we are focusing on implementation as well. So if you can, give us a little bit of insight on, yes, we are implementing the policy, then how to monitor, like whether the right, we are in the right path on this to bridge the gap.
Yeah. Vanakkam, namaskar, and a very warm afternoon to all of you, special dignitaries, and GiftAbled, and the audience present here. Let me say something about what is happening in our university uh, regarding the differently able or serving the disabled. We have got a dedicated cell called the HN, Higher Education for Persons with Special Needs. That was a requirement, in the 5-year plan, and later on the Equal Opportunity Cell came. But I would like to have the HN in almost, at least in all the higher education institutions. That will be of immense utility for the differently able students. And if possible, we can have it in schools also. Number two, when last week I just we had some 5 lakh students, more than 5 lakh students appearing for the board exams in the school level. So presuming even if there is 4 or 5%, it's almost 25,000. I don't know whether that many students come to the higher education in the form of colleges or universities. So how should we attract them? That is a very important thing which has to be done. And accessibility wise, I strongly believe that every education institutions, as I said, should have a HEPSIN unit with the coordinator and a counselor and a placement officer if it's a education college or a university. Plus, we need a license officer that is there. It's all format. It's all the modalities which have been spelled out by the RPWD Act. You should have a license officer. You should have a grievance redressal officer. You should have a nodal officer. Nodal officer should be of a very powerful rank. So all these things have been spelled out in the Act. But I'm doubting how many institutions are having that. Fortunately, in our university, we have HIPSIN, we have a license officer and a grievance redressal officer. So, powerful nodal officer would be more important, I think so. More importantly, all these officers, all these positions should be entrusted to the physically challenged. That is very important. That is very important. I feel that is what is not there. It is what is lacking. In fact, not only I'm talking from the education institution point of view, not only this, from any position, including the commissioner, the disabled, or the deputy commissioner, or the office of commissioner, we can have a separate department in the ministry for the physically challenged, have a minister who is a physically challenged, have a commissioner. Everybody should be, from the disabled, so that there is some commitment, that extra commitment is there, that extra passion will be there, that they understand the needs of disabled. They themselves are disabled, so they will understand the needs of disabled, and then they will have the passion. Then it will be easy, I think so. It will be effective to fulfill all the policies which Sir said. It's in paper, yes, it's true. There are a lot of papers for us, but the implementation, the execution, I think if you entrust it to disabled persons themselves, I think it will be more effective. In our university, absent coordinator, placement officer, the license officer, the grievance redressal officer, all of us are physically challenged. So we have that extra passion. We know, we have the empathy. So we try to solve the problems of the physically challenged when it comes to us case by case. And also, we are struggling, we are trying to make the buildings accessible, we are trying to do whatever possible. So I think the execution point, please leave it to the physically challenged. I think that will make the process effective.
Yes, indeed. Indeed, it is true. So, yes, Sir is telling us to go towards the passion, obviously, because accessibility, inclusivity is more kind of a mindset. Once you have the mindset, you will be able to, yes, figure out the challenges and you can solve the problem. And yeah, it's true for Pondicherry University as well. They have a separate accessibility cell which takes out these kind of challenges and try to figure solution for that. yes, with this, I'll once again go to Dr. Nitika. So let's talk about National Educational Policy 2020 here. So it was said that yes, it is clearly stated in the policy that yes, each and every children with disability, they must be enabled to participate in regular schools from the very fundamental stage to the higher education, and they should participate in it. So now when we are talking about transforming this regular institute into an accessible one, so how in that case curriculum should be framed, okay, so that yes, every student feel included.
See, now that the curriculum framework and the pedagogical structure of school education will be guided by a 5+3+3+4 design instead of a 10+2, which consists of the foundational stage, preparatory stage, middle stage, and secondary stage. The overall thrust of curriculum reforms across all stages will be to move the education towards the real understanding and towards learning how to learn and away from the culture of rote learning. And the aim of education is now more focused on cognitive development, building character, creating holistic and well rounded individuals who are equipped with 21st century skills. And the policy recognizes the importance of creating enabling mechanisms for providing children with special needs the same opportunities of obtaining quality education like everyone around. And it also reaffirms equitable and inclusive education that bridges the social category gaps in access, participation, and learning outcomes. The policy is in complete consonance with the provisions of RPWD Act, and it endorses its recommendation also for the socially economically disadvantaged groups, also known as SEDGs, that includes gender identities, cultural identities, geographical identities, disabilities, and also socioeconomic conditions. Now, the curriculum content in terms of the reframing for the schools, we would need to look at reducing, the content will be reduced in each subject to its core essentials to make space for critical thinking, inquiry based, discovery based, discussion based, and analysis based learning. And the content will also focus on key concepts, ideas, applications, and problem solving. So additionally, we can see that experiential learning will be adopted. Students will be empowered through flexibility in course choices. When we talk about dual languages and all of that, now NEP promotes multilingualism that includes Indian Sign Language. There is curricular integration of essential subjects, skills, and capacities. There is support for gifted students and students with special talents. There is more focus on life skills and vocationalization of curriculum. There is a much more expanded range of subjects and also an option of integration of subjects. The learning is more focused on experiential and activity centered learning, and there is much more higher flexibility in the assessment and evaluation system. So the NEP proposes the revision and revamping of all the aspects of educational structure, including the curriculum and its regulation, to create a new system that is much more aligned with the aspirational goals of 21st century education, along with building upon India's traditional and value system. So that's how I see that the curriculum in the coming days would be reformed, and also particularly in the context of children with special needs.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. It's wonderful to, so yeah, so like evaluation flexibility in the curriculum, which will actually allow more and more students to get in. So yes, with this, I'll have my next question to Mr. Bhagat. So yes, sir, as you are towards the technology, and whenever we think about accessibility, we try building an accessible educational institute. So technology is an indispensable need. So my question to you will be, how important do you think is technology in framing inclusive educational institute, and what are the areas we should be focusing on?
Uh, Thanks for that question. I mean, technology, how and what level of importance it has. It can be enabler. Technology can be an enabler, but if it is designed and implemented properly, if you provide a technology which is not accessible, then the same technology can be showstopper for students with disabilities. We have seen that in many websites in terms of e-learning material, in terms of study material. Whenever we provide something which is inaccessible, people, instead of utilizing that, instead of enabling them, it basically stops their education. So
Yeah.
it's the core responsibility what we all have from the technology point of view to understand the accessibility requirements of people, these are students having special needs, number one. Number two, how to implement them using technology. Of course, technology has got solutions. Yeah, there are solutions which we will have them right away, or in some areas we will have to do some extra research. But whatever is possible, whatever is maximum is possible, we all have to deliver that. Number two. Number three, how can technology will be helpful in framing this? I would say whatever digital platforms you have in, let's take an example of university. You have a university website, you have an online admission forms, then online curriculum, you have video conferencing tools for the online classes. And because of the pandemic, what we've had last 2 years, we know the importance of digital medium, and we know the importance of online presence. So if this online presence and if the technology is rightly used and implemented, then only students with special needs can utilize it. Then only they can say that no, our technology and the tools are helping me. But otherwise, they will have a difficult time for sure. Another important thing, right from the procurement, when universities, schools, they have to understand that whenever they procure a technology, they have to ensure that the technology is compliant to certain national and international accessibility guidelines. I mean, really happy to share this that I was a part of this initiative from my company in which we were developing the Indian standard for ICT accessibility. The standard is out in the market. It is gadgeted and notified by BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. The number is IS 17802. So, in terms of procurement, what people have to do is the procurement officers, the policy makers. So, whenever they procure anything for their school, the university, they have to ensure that it supports the accessibility. Number one, it has got some compliance level, and then if there's some issue, they should be having the direct dialogue with the vendor so that they can fix the challenges and they can provide maximum accessible content to all the students with disabilities. I think that's how we can create that inclusive picture. What Nitika ma'am had rightly mentioned, that is the only driving force we all have to have a policy, to have a process, to have a right implementation, to have a right monitoring mechanism, and of course the technology is always there with correct approach and with the correct processes.
Yes. Yeah, that this is also very insightful. So basically, whenever we talk about accessibility, we just end up the discussion. Okay, we need technology, but yes, technology understanding the accessibility requirement. This is very important, and yes, also basically compliance technology with compliance. So yes, with this, let me go ahead with I'll go ahead with Dr. Madan Mohan. So, sir, we are talking about inclusive curriculum framework, also the use of technology. Now, are there any kind of accessibility guidelines present for teachers or other staffs at the educational institute, which can actually help us in framing an inclusive education? Sir, you are on mute. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, See, guidelines are there actually. I know I've seen some guidelines, but more than guidelines, we should have certain things in our mind. For that, we need some empathy, and for that, we should be aware of there is a segment called the differently able segment, and we have to provide for them. So that is important. Guidelines may be there, may not be there. Guidelines may be there and it may be circulated to you, may not be circulated to you. So we are not sure about whether all of us will be getting the guidelines to begin with. And even if you get the guidelines, whether it be implemented. So rather than the regulatory framework, I suppose that the mind, the heart should be there, and for that, everybody should be sensitized. As I said, we have to sensitize all the people towards the different area, towards the disability. See, RAM, for example, is a regulatory framework. It is there. It must be there. No, but in some buildings, ramp will be there. And after the ramp, there'll be one or two steps. What's the point in having that ramp? So
Yeah.
they'll be showing that there's a ramp as per the rules and regulations there are. So more than the guidelines, we should know why it is asked for or why we are asked for. Then we can have our own guidelines because each of us should be given the flexibility. Ultimately, it should end in the benefit of the different label of the disabled. That's what it means. Whatever guidelines, yeah, but we should have our own frame of mind. For that, all of us needs to be sensitized. They have to be sensitized. Every one of us have to be sensitized. And then I suppose all the guidelines will be automatically implemented. Guidelines like, for example, we should have a sign language interpreter in all the higher education institutions. That is there. How many institutions are having it? Big question mark. So, of course, it's better now. We are moving towards that, but still, guidelines. Why do we need that guideline? That we should understand. A sign language interpreter should be there. Why do we need it? Why should we need it? We should think about it, or we should be made to think about it. Why should the website be accessible? Why? We should be, all of us should be made to think about it. Why is it to be accessible? There is a big segment of people who are using it, who have to be allowed to use it. So that sort of mental attitude that has to be incorporated among all the people. For that, sensitization is the important thing which has to be done. And I feel that that sensitization can be brought about by incorporating sessions, full day session on disability in whatever training programs we are executing. For example, we teaching people have to undergo 28-day orientation course and 3 refresher courses. That's obligatory. Now incorporate in all these training programs at least one day on disability. Same way, every government officials will be undergoing training. Same way, all the civil servants, bureaucrats, everybody will be having their own training. Incorporate this in as a one day.
Absolutely.
Then we will have
Exactly, absolutely. And so, yeah, Dr. Nitika, with this, so you are actively working in this disability rehabilitation framework. And, when we talk about, okay, transforming our regular classrooms into this inclusive one, then we also have to think that there will be children with profound disabilities who also need space. They also have to be included. So how, our inclusive classroom should be designed so that it can actually accommodate students with profound disabilities as well.
Um, Rupshaji, when we talk about profound disabilities, I would want to categorize these students and students with high support needs in particular into two categories. The first would be profound disability without intellectual disability. For example, profound cerebral palsy, profound hearing impairment, etc. And the second category would include individuals with profound disability having profound or moderate intellectual disability, or even an individual with deaf blindness. So, and in both these cases, they may need separate type of support or separate type of intervention for inclusion in education. While the first category, that is the one without intellectual disability, may only need assistive devices, technology, a therapeutic support, or a resource room intervention, individualized planning, or an accommodation and evaluation, etc., for effective inclusion. But the second category of individuals may need activity-based inclusion. They may need segregated training and care for activities of daily living. They may need intense therapeutic intervention and much more. And their inclusion needs require much more planning and can be much more challenging as compared to that of the first category. And coming to the second part of your question, that is the design considerations for inclusive classroom for children with profound disabilities. For this, I strongly feel that we need to identify the various support needs that the individual may have, which may include at the level of physical or biological needs, social and communication needs, cognitive, sensory, psychological need, or educational and the medical aspects for each child. So some of the examples, to name a few in terms of the design aspects could include, a well lit, a good lighting in the classroom, a well ventilated classroom, an environment that is non-injurious, which may include ensuring that we avoid any kind of sharp edges or anything that may cause an injury to the child. It may include classroom furniture that can be redesigned or rearranged. It may include open spaces for floor seating activities. We can prefer smart classes and use of ICT, as Mr. Sai said. We can also think of flexibility in classroom schedules. We can think of storage area for assistive devices. Someone may want to keep calipers or wheelchairs somewhere else and would want to prefer sitting in a adapted chair. We want to look at lavatories to be more accessible. And specifically, when we talk about children with autism, children with attention deficit disorder, or learning disability, or even low vision, a lot of times we see classrooms, the teachers, and it's a usual practice that we have, on the notice boards, on the, the display boards, and the decor that we use in the classroom is very, very highly distracting. We use a lot of bright colors, we use excessive, bright colors, and a number of bright colors at the same wall. So that could lead to a lot of distraction for those children, or a sensory overload for those children. Providing alternative and augmentative communication methods could be another design consideration. And when we talk about, I would want to take this answer further, what can we do in terms of what is available, and what are the initiatives that we can take to include children with profound disabilities. I'm again very happy to share that there are already government initiatives. There are a lot of schemes, be it SIPDA scheme or the Accessible India campaign, where the government welcomes a lot of projects, not just from the NGO sector, the disabled people organizations, and even government bodies, who are welcome to apply to schemes to promote inclusion and accessibility for all categories of disabilities. There is a scope of awareness generation and sensitization and teacher training, making public places or existing spaces much more accessible. And also we can parallelly think of how within our institutional structure we can think of budgets that can be allocated to profound disabilities. Also recently there have been government initiative of braille press screen promotion, or projects like cross disability early intervention centers that are very well equipped for long term inclusion and access for children with profound disabilities. There is now and a convergence with Ministry of Education and new HRD programs that are being taken out by Rehabilitation Council of India, that kind of empowers institutions towards taking accepting children with profound disabilities. And also at the higher education level, UGC website pe you can look at the UGC website. There are now national guidelines that are in process of finalization for not just accessibility for education, but also digital accessibility for education, and also SEDG group accessibility for higher and technical education. So a lot more things are being undertaken by the government and NGO sector, including R&D projects that are specifically targeted to children and adults with profound disabilities. So at our level, we can focus on capacity building programs for different stakeholders that could include parents and siblings as well, along with teachers and the administrators, that I think would help us in the long run and help us in efficient inclusion of children with profound disabilities. Thank you.
Great, great. Great to know about all this, informative things. And yeah, so as we are, including children with profound disabilities in our inclusive classroom, so with this, I'll go to Mr. Sai Bhagat. So, sir, as you have also mentioned, right? In this pandemic situation, we all are exposed more to technologies, starting from webinars to e-meets. Our students are also exposed to technologies because there was a time they were regularly doing online classes. Now, one of the thing was that yes, e-learning content. So how important, should be e-learning content, how much emphasis we should be putting on e-learning content in order to create this inclusive curriculum?
I believe, we have to provide the topmost priority to the e-learning content, because
Hmm.
as we all know, the whole gamut of syllabus, whole gamut of curriculum is moving towards that interactive learning.
Hmm.
Students specifically don't want to go for the monotonous way of study, which we all have done during those days. Nowadays, everyone wants to have that interactive learning modules in which they can use the different sensory characters. They can experience, they can read, they can write, they can observe, they can monitor, and a lot of other things. I mean, it's basically, as mentioned by Nitika ma'am, that we are building that cognitive ability, and we are trying our level best through the studies, through the curriculum, through the set of policies and processes. We are improving the cognition. We are trying our level best to take this on a next level, so that whenever the students comes out from their educational institutes, they are ready for the floor, they're ready for the real practical scenarios in their life. And that's the reason these e-learning modules, I believe, are extremely important. Now, how to make them more inclusive? I mean, as I mentioned, a lot of digital accessibility guidelines are there, right? From WCAG, Develop Content Accessibility Guidelines. You have GIGW, you have ICT standard, which I've just mentioned. We all have to make sure that whoever is developing them, whoever is designing them, whoever is testing them, deploying them, we have to make sure that everything, each and every phase of the development life cycle has accessibility integrated. So
Yeah.
many times what happens, you prepare something, the product is ready, it is ready for the launch, and 2 days before the product launch, someone comes from the policy area and from the decision makers, and they comes and says that no, we have to make it accessible. And within a 2 days, what you will do with accessibility?
Yeah.
You will have to do a lot of retrofitting, and then end of the day, all the developers and designers start scribbling that accessibility is very difficult, it's very expensive, time consuming, which is again absolutely biggest myth. They have not included accessibility at the correct time, they have not integrated accessibility at the correct time. Because of that, this issue has occurred. So I mean, that is the topmost criteria we all have to have, that we have to focus on the accessible e-learning content, so that whenever students with disabilities will compete or will learn, will educate themselves apart from their other friends, they will be on the same level, they will enjoy the content the way all students without disabilities do, and then they should be able to participate completely.
Great. Yeah, this is I like I wonderful. So like not only like yeah once a product or once a service or once a content is designed, we should be thinking about the accessibility. But yeah, it should be from the very scratch of it, right? Um, yeah, and one more thing I would like to ask. So yes, we are talking about these inclusive classrooms and all. So if our e-learning so content and everything is designed, then for students as well, do you believe that yes, at least for students with disability, like students with locomotor disability who has problem in the locomotion, maybe for traveling to school for them is kind of challenging. So in that case, online classes can continue for a specific set of students for them, basically for them who has the challenge to traveling to school.
Absolutely, I 100% agree on that. It's
Hmm.
so whenever we think of accessibility, we
Hmm.
always make the statement that provide alternatives. So
Yeah.
if I'm not comfortable, or if I
Hmm.
don't prefer choice A, I should be offered choice B. You're going to ask me that no, this is the only one option, and if
Hmm.
not comfortable, my sensory ability is not allowing me to operate, my sensory disabilities are stopping me from using that, and I'm deprived from those things, then that will be a challenge. That's the reason we demand always for alternatives, we demand always for preference based mechanism in which everyone has got their preferences. They can opt in, they can opt out. And this is how we can create that inclusive culture, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, true. Yes. Thank you so much. And with this, my next question will be to Dr. Madan Mohan. Now, this e-learning content. So during the pandemic situation as well, sir, we have seen that yeah, a number of e-learning contents are designed mainly for children. Even NCRT collaborated with Rotary India, and they designed certain contents which are available currently on their website. I am from West Bengal, as you know, in our place, so government schools, as they were remaining closed and students present over there, so they were really not in a position to continue online classes. So the government of West Bengal collaborated with different news channels, and there were classes going on. That is also a kind of um, e-learning classes that also continued for CBSE board as well. So yes, there are e-learning contents where, although there are a few accessibility measures are also there, but the question remains, are they reaching to the remote part of our country, and how much students with disability they are accessing it? So do we have any kind of report on that?
Well, digital technology reaching the remote part of country
Hmm.
generally is very tough. We all know that. So whether it is reaching even the normal children, that itself is a question mark. We have seen a lot of TV programs where teachers, even during the pandemic, especially in the remote parts like the hilly areas, teachers are going to the houses of the students and teaching them out of commitment. Right. Even the TV programs are not reaching them, so they are in such parts of the, the country. We have seen the news items about all those things. So digital platforms reaching that's why we call them as unreached. They are unreached sections of the society. So I am not sure whether digitalization of now will be able to reach the people in the unreached pockets of the country. And if it comes to the differently able or disabled, well, we can understand. If it's very tough for the normal people, then how is it possible for the disabled? It's not going to be easy. Um, but what to do? So we didn't expect this pandemic to begin with. So, making the technology reaching the unreached is not that easy. So, what can we do? I think better what we can do, if at all there are uh, disabled students in these type of areas, why not we try to bring them to the normal area, to the easier areas, try to accommodate them. Maybe like a special school, we can accommodate them along with their escort or somebody, so that they can access the digital learning. But I am, yeah, right from the beginning, I'm not for digital learning actually in our country, especially in our country, and not for digital learning. If it's out of compulsion, okay, right, no other option, it's no option. So let's go for it. We have no option. But
Yeah.
when is it when it is possible, when it is easily possible, let's go for the physical mode of learning, because learning is not just acquiring knowledge. It's not just acquiring knowledge. We should allow the students to have peer relationship with their own peers, with the teachers. The physical interaction is something different. No, we won't get the benefit that what we are getting from a physical interaction with your teacher, with your peers. That is different. So let's try our best to keep it to the physical mode. If it's compulsion, like the pandemic, then we have to give some opportunity, some arrangement for the differently able, for the disabled students, so that they don't face the connectivity issues or the. No, I'm very sure that the remote areas of the country is not possible to be reached.
Yeah.
That's no question about it. So that is the question of reaching the differently able, disabled students. It's already unreached society, unreached area. And these poor people are, again, they make things more complicated. So I don't know, I can't visualize anything like
Oh.
reaching the remote areas through the technology right now. Our country, understandable, we have a lot of problems, a lot of geographical disparities. So right now, the best thing we can do is, in case we are compelled to have a digital learning, then we should try to bring the differently abled people, differently abled students to the nearby areas, which is better accessible.
Yes, truly. Or other way around, yeah, the NGOs or the other different groups which are volunteers group who are working there, maybe they can be a little bit active and try to bring in the change. Yes, and also yes, I also agree that yeah, let's not have digital, content like that compulsion of having digital content in education. Yes, because in the initial years, at least in the primary section and all, so the presence of teachers, learning from teachers, that actually helps. So yeah, maybe a hybrid model. Yes. So with this, I'll move to Dr. Nitika. Now, once again, as you know, as you you are a disability rehabilitation professional, so my my I just really wanted to understand that yes, as you know, we are designing our inclusive classrooms, taking into consideration different categories of disability. So similarly, on the whole, on the institutional framework, what kind of rules or regulations must be there, like the organization? We also today with us have a number of NGOs, organizations who are tirelessly working for empowering people with disability. There is no doubt in the fact that you possess the expertise. So when we are framing this kind of inclusive educational institutes, what kind of institutional framework must be there which will actually enable us to achieve the success? You're on mute.
Sorry. As we plan to, adopt or implement, the best practices or the framework, my first request would be to urge all the institutes who are planning to go inclusive, in the inclusion journey. I urge that we must first assess the need and required supports, not just of the target group that we are focusing on, but also to assess ourselves on the various accessibility indicators as the first step towards it. We can maybe begin by ensuring that our institute's mission, vision, and value statement is more inclusive. We can engage in empathy development. We can engage in inclusion discussions at campus, or maybe training on diversity. We can begin by engaging in a continuous capacity building of our stakeholders on the inclusion and accessibility aspects. We can start by administrative empowerment and review of policies, schemes, and provisions, or the procedures and practices in our institute for removal of all the barriers towards accessibility. For instance, if I am running a college, the admission session is going on, maybe a person with hearing impairment walks in and I don't have a sign language interpreter. Right at the very step the person is coming in, I am kind of denying that access. So and then talking about inclusion in education comes at much later stage. So we need to take efforts towards administrative empowerment and reviewing our practices and procedures to ensure that we are removing barriers that we identify. We need to also take measures to kind of evaluate the student's success. As I was talking to someone in the chat, right from enrollment to retention to maybe the promotion from one grade to another, to course completion, or finally getting a graduation degree. And we also in higher education have campus placement programs for employment, so to employment, and also maybe taking student feedback of individuals or students with disabilities for accessibility issues. These are the measures that I believe should be the first step towards our journey for inclusion. And then simultaneously we can take measures towards adopting best practices or protocols, or the practices in terms of zero rejection policy in admission. having a robust equal opportunity cell, having a robust grievance redressal cell, having physical and digital accessibility, as sir was rightly pointing out. Till date, unfortunately, even at the government websites of our own ministry, at times there are documents that are uploaded which are in image forms, scanned images, and which are not readable by individuals with visual impairment. They're not able to access it through their software. So working towards that, making our digital presence and physical presence much more accessible, offering curricular accessibility, capacity building of not just our staff but also the peer groups of the student. Employment of persons with disabilities to showcase as a model. uh, you know we can begin by hiring individuals with disabilities as teachers, or in the administrative framework that we have, or any other department that we have, that can showcase us as a model of someone who has inclusive practices at our organization. We can look at, as Ruksha ji was rightly pointing out, we can look at how we can converge with NGOs and disabled people organizations and parent associations, or maybe even national institutes and composite regional centers, for developing our capacity for effective inclusion. Having a single window service policy. A lot of times what we see is, even in inclusive school, be it primary or secondary level of education, a lot of students specifically with developmental disabilities may need therapeutic intervention, may need occupational therapy, speech therapy, but the schools blatantly refuse to offer that service, and they would ask you to go to an XYZ clinic or take such services outside of their campus. So maybe we can think of including that component in our policy of school, that maybe we can offer a single window service where
That I'm going to get those questions, because there only I can speak a little. In terms of research, I mean, I was also involved. I mean, in my company, in many other companies, the research which is related to accessibility is going on. What could be the focus areas? My personal opinion is technology is evolving.
Yeah.
You all must have heard artificial intelligence,
Hmm.
machine learning, heavily intelligible text to speech engines, speech to text. How these emerging technologies can be helpful to leverage the maximum capacity of education, as
Yeah.
mentioned by Nitika ma'am, that how we have to create that inclusive culture, how we all have to create the competency amongst the staff, amongst the peers, so that the technology can be enabler. The what sort of research we all should focus on? We must first understand the how the emerging technologies would help, what sort of applications we can come upon, which will help students with disabilities in their daily learning needs. I mean, I know yesterday. I mean, we had a workshop. One of the instructors who just approached me and just told me that, do you have a software which will help me in teaching the primary students, primary level students, because they are slow learners, they're dyslexic. So awareness is not there. Number one. Number two, the technological products specifically designed for a certain preferences. For an example, people those are having low cognition, intellectual disabilities, learning disabilities, people those are having dyslexic, there's ASD for that matter. We need to have specific product research, and we have to come up with these products which will enable students with disabilities to focus on certain learning areas. And of course, with these emerging technologies, what I've mentioned, it's very much possible. We all have to contribute to that thing. I mean, as mentioned by Nitika ma'am, that it's not only one person's job, that the trainer, the faculty, the staff, students, their siblings, parents, researchers, we all have to work together to understand the requirement and to create the future technologies which will help, which will enrich the educational experience for students with disabilities. And I believe, I mean, as a technological person, it's very much possible. Let me tell you, it's very much possible. We need to have that heavy focus. And of course, the budgeting is always a concern for research. And then when you go for research, people develop some prototypes, some products, and then never goes to the end users. We all have to make sure that the research has to be product oriented. It should reach the needy people, and that will that should actually impact on their daily life. I mean, that's what the focus for future generations, what we all have to have.
Yes, yes, rightly pointed. So yes, technology is evolving, right? So we will have to put our efforts, put our focus on also checking like how we can develop from a time to time basis. Thank you so much, sir. And yes, with this, I'll be moving towards Dr. Madan Mohan. With this is basically our last individual question to our guest. So yes, sir. Now, as we are talking about, these inclusive classrooms, inclusive education, so we are saying that, okay, in our classrooms, there must be students with and without disability. Somewhere we will also have to emphasize the fact that, yes, in our teachers, like in that particular institutes, teachers should also be with and without disability. So, yes, Dr. Madan Mohan is a person with visual impairment. He is associated with Pondicherry University. And in this regard, to you, sir. So, how much do you think it requires the involvement of parents? So, when if specific institutes they are framing their own flexible, inclusive guidelines. So, how much parents of the students must should be involved in this process? Specifically, when we talk about inclusive education, it also comes up with individualized learning modules, right? So, every children is different. Their learning needs are different. So that's how content should be developed. So yes, where comes the role of the involvement of parents in all these processes?
See, parents, that's where the kids start their life. So parents should be knowing the kids better than anybody and everybody. So they will know the needs of their kids, right? So that is simple. When you ask a parent, see, if you want to know about me, the best person who will be able to tell about me will be my mother, obviously. Of course, now my wife, because she is living with me for more than 20, 22 years. But still, it was my mother who was with me for almost 25 to 26 years. She'll be able to tell exactly about me. What is my requirement? She knows. So when it comes to a classroom, the parents, especially the mother, okay, especially the mother, will be able to give us better inputs about what the kids need, what is the need of the kid, what should be done, which will make it easier for the kids to sit and have a pleasant learning experience. It's obviously and perfectly true that the mothers have to do a lot of work on this. No? In fact, a lot of work in the sense we have to take a lot of inputs from the mother. See, regarding the technology, for example, you were asking sir about the technology, the research. If you ask the visually impaired person, he'll be telling you very, very interesting points for research.
Yes.
If you ask the mother, she'll be telling you very interesting points for research, which will make your life easy, which will facilitate your life. You know, a driverless car, for example, that was my dream when I was 5 years old, 6 years old. Mind you, that was 20 years back. 45 years back, I was dreaming about let me enter into a car. I will just put the system. I will enter. I have to go there, and the car will take me there. That was my fantasy. It was those days fantasy. Now it is coming up, trying to come up. No, it is not evolving, but it is coming. See, so the points which your mother, which my mother will be telling,
Yeah.
will be something which will be really useful for all the physically challenged or disabled people. So yes, you have to include the parents. Not parents, it should be the mother, not just father.
Yeah, the parents and the caregivers in the curriculum framework,
Definitely, the
right?
mother will
Absolutely.
be really contributing a lot. And
Yes.
will be really contributing a lot.
Yes, yes, and also, yeah, when we talk about sensitization of the different school administrative teachers and all, maybe somewhere we can include the parents as well, because when we are framing an inclusive education, so there will be parents of both children with and without disability, so they should also be aware of what kind of friends and peers their children are having. So yes,
The point is they will be knowing
Yeah.
What is the requirement?
Exactly.
That it is like, their need-based approach, right? That it's marketing also says about customer orientation. How
Yes.
to do that customer orientation? You should know what the customer needs are. The
Yeah,
best
we have.
source is parents, best source is mother.
Exactly. Truly. And this all the initial surveys and everything. One question to you all, if you can just quickly cover. So that is, yes, so accessibility is currently a topic which is talked about a lot. And there are also many schools, colleges, universities who have started their journey. So what will be, your advice to them? It's like what should be the initial steps, initial action items they must complete in order to, continue in the process? So yes, Dr. Nitika.
Again, going to this question, because I work with a lot with individuals with developmental and multiple disabilities, I would want to request everyone to make sure that when we're talking about participation of family, not only focus on parents, let also focus on including siblings, including grandparents, and also including the caregiver in that in that whole journey. Because specifically for persons with developmental and high support needs and multiple disabilities, those are key, they have a key role in maintaining the quality of life of the individual. So please, let's also take them along with the parents. And now, coming to the question, of how to start the inclusion journey. See, creating a school that is inclusive starts in each classroom, I believe, and but it must also be a wider in scope, and it definitely requires specific strategies, a shift in the culture of the school, and also an encouragement from the school administration, teachers, and students. So we must encourage and embrace the journey that we take for diversity, inclusion, and equity while we are program planning for individuals with special needs. And I'm very glad that you use the word journey in this question, because the key here is the journey, and it's not just an isolated plan or an initiative. So we must begin, as I previously mentioned, that by evaluating the various aspects of access and the need assessment of our institute. That must include the aspects of curriculum and instruction, on and off campus services that we're offering, physical spaces, ICT and assistive technology, student evaluation practices, events and campus climate, residential and non-residential facilities, access of those. And some of the starting points for taking this journey for your school could include, undertaking sensitization programs, empathy development programs, capacity building programs, or convergence, as I said, with the national institutes, disabled people organizations, or NGOs, and also resource mobilization. A lot of times, as we were constantly mentioning, the lack of budget and budget restrictions, we also need to look into resource mobilization for taking such initiatives, and establishing maybe an equal opportunity cell that caters to diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that could be the starting point of everything. And to quickly sum up, I think this journey may surely have rough roads, or you may have to take detours, but every step that your school takes will be very, very invaluable to our children and their futures. And I would highly encourage you to take that first step for now, and if you haven't yet. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is very nicely covered. And yes, with this, quickly to Mr. Sai Bhagat, what will be your recommendations on it? And I have received a number of questions as well in the chat box. So yeah, we'll be taking on to those in the next. So yes, quickly, Mr.
Yes, I'll answer that quickly. First of all, we have to have an incremental approach. We should not simply run behind, because we have seen that people kept over ambitious strategies. They have started implementing those assistive technology labs and other stuff, and then everything went for a toss after a couple of months. We don't want that, because that simply stops the overall inclusion process. We should not do that. We have to have an incremental approach. Let's have a soft targets which you can easily achieve, and then go one by one. As mentioned by ma'am, awareness is a key. So we have to spread awareness amongst all the stakeholders. It's not only with the staff or the faculties. We have to include parents, peers, their friends, siblings, everyone for that matter. And I mean, I reinstate once again, have to have an incremental approach. We should not over ambitiously design something which
Yeah.
we may kill after a couple of months, and then this overall inclusion may stop. We don't want that. We want children to be more so that the overall their education, their learning would progress in the right direction.
Truly, truly. So it should be a journey all through, right? It's not a sudden thing we are taking maybe for a quarter or a few months and then we are just
Absolutely.
putting an end to it. So yes, thank you so much for this. And yeah, Dr. Madan Mohan. So yes, insights from you. Okay, we can.
I will give a very simple mechanism, Aksha. Forget about international standards, forget about ISO, ISI, just forget about everything. If you are trying to plan a inclusive building, you ask all the sections, how it should be. If you want to build a ramp, just ask a wheelchair user how the ramp should be. Because there are many ramps in and around us which
Yeah.
cannot be accessible for a wheelchair user. A wheelchair
Yeah.
user himself has said this. So just include the people, include the stakeholders, include the disabled. If you want to make your building accessible, you include the disabled in the process. I'm telling you, your building will be perfectly accessible. Very simple. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And with this, we are almost over time. So first of all, thank you so much to all our respected guest speakers for your amazing point of views, for this wonderful insights. We have taken it all. We will be surely be following it, and we will be working across it to improve. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you so much to all the participants who have joined us today. Thank you, Eshtar, for this wonderful interpretation. And thank you to our sponsors, Cisco, Walmart Global Tech India, and NASCOM Foundation for helping us to conduct this wonderful session. Thank you, everyone.